KoshienCast, the world's least qualified podcast to discuss wrestling. Today, my name is Matt, and joining me today is a very special guest, Matt.
That's me.
Hey, welcome on, Matt. Always appreciate having you here.
I always appreciate being had.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. So we are on week 4 of the winter season, covering all sports anime from January 22nd to January 28th. Do we have any announcements this week? I don't think we do.
No, don't have anything big to go through. I guess the one thing we would say is that, you know, when we do get iTunes reviews, we read them at the top of the show. So if you want to leave a positive review, we're happy to read that on the show. And also just happy to hear from you in other ways through email or through social media. And we'll go through those in the credits at the end of the episode.
Yeah. Cool. So I guess we're just going to jump right into it this week then. We are going to start off with Yowamushi Pedal, New Generation.
Right.
Which I will be covering. So this week we have more of a introduction to Ashikiba. Like, as we saw last week, you know, he seemed kind of blah and blasé towards everything. But as we find out, during races, he gets really passionate and into it. And he very quickly catches up with the Sohoku gang, with Onoda, Teshima, and Imaizumi. And what we discover is that Ashikiba, he has this very odd he has a very similar shaking method as he climbs to Makishima, and he has the metronome. He has like the metronome pedal, which basically he very steadily goes back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
And effectively what happens is he catches up to them, and he passes Teshima. Teshima keeps valiantly fighting against him, which inspires something in Onoda and basically causes him to race on ahead. It kind of awakens something in Onoda, watching Teshima fight very valiantly against this incredibly talented cyclist that, you know, Teshima really has no chance up against.
Yeah. So,
and then the end of the episode, we haven't had the resolution to the race yet, but I think the next episode is going to be going into Onoda and Ashikiba's showdown, as it were.
Yeah, definitely. I thought this was fun.
Yeah.
It was. This is basically what I'm looking for out of Yowamushi. You've got sort of this goofy but not absurd character from Hakone, Ashikiba. He has some pre-existing relationship with Teshima, so you get some allusions to their past friendship and the fact that they still, you know, care about each other, but for whatever reason, Ashikiba ended up at Hakone and lost contact with Teshima, and so, you know, it's kind of, you know, it's interesting to speculate on exactly what happened there, but also you just get some really fun animation with seeing their different styles. With Ashikiba is clearly so lanky that he can dominate the course just by his body size. He has so much momentum going into each pedal, and it really does feel heroic to see Teshima keeping pace, even though everyone's saying that he can't maintain it for the rest of the race.
Yeah, something I was really worried about Ashikiba is that I was really worried he was going to be just kind of another sort of brooding emo type character. You know, he doesn't really care. You know, he's just doing this because his team wants him to. He doesn't really enjoy it that much. No, I am glad as soon as the race started, he started going nuts. And it's an interesting dynamic that I wish I saw more, which was the whole thing about how, like, they kind of have somebody who has, you know, their normal everyday face, you know, their kind of mild manner, and then they have their game face. And the way they conveyed that was really fun, because as he was, like, trying to catch up to them, he just has this elated look on his face as Ode to Joy plays very boisterously in the background.
Yeah. What did you think of his... The fact that his pump-up music is Beethoven?
I thought that was... On one hand, it does feel like it's because it's public domain, but it is also based off of manga, so, you know, whatever. But you know what? I thought they made it work in this episode. at the very least. Like having, like, I don't know, it's like, it gives it this sort of soaring feel that I wouldn't have expected out of, a cycling anime.
Yeah, it is also kind of a funny disconnect, to see
Yeah.
this enormous man speeding up to you and like catching up to you from behind with a smile on his face while you have a choral version of Ode to Joy playing in the background,
Yeah.
and his internal
Yeah.
monologue is like, ah, Beethoven's Ninth.
Yes, I can
Otherwise,
still hear it in my head!
yeah,
Like, kind of almost going mad as he's, like, writing. And, it's like, I really appreciate that out of Ashikiba. These are the types of characters I like to see in sports anime.
yeah.
Um,
I also like that he's not evil. It's
right.
so easy to make the moody character like secretly evil, but they just
Right.
made him like secretly super into classical music.
Yeah, because they change it from Ode to Joy to Beethoven's Fifth as like Teshima goes up against them, and again, it works both for the character because we're looking at it from the character's mindset, but it also fits the scene, kind of trying to capture like Teshima's like grand attempt to fight against this man who's very naturally talented, and
hmm
he's even getting excited over this, yes, now Beethoven's Fifth is playing in my head, and this valiant like battle that we're having right now.
Yeah.
And
So
so it was a real fun episode. I'm kind of glad. Um, they also played with that a little bit too. They did this. They had probably one of the funniest jokes in Yowamushi Pedal, I would
hmm
say,
yeah.
which was they gave him kind of another weird character trait, which is that he can't seem to recognize Imaizumi.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
I, I I don't know if it's so much that he doesn't recognize him or if he's just like an airhead, but he looks over to Maizumi and is like, ah, it is you, Onoda. And then the music kind of stops, and then Onoda sort of responds like, hi! Like, yes, that's me!
Yeah.
Like, as if, like, without missing a beat, effectively.
Yeah.
Like, without even, like, noticing. And then it goes a little bit further, and he's like, ah, so it's you, Onoda. And he just sort of looks at it, like, he doesn't even, like,
He doesn't
he doesn't
acknowledge
even
it.
acknowledge it.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And I like that he's like, ah, so you must be Nekoma, the Red Comet. And
Like he keeps getting
yeah,
who they are
exactly.
wrong.
And it becomes very clear that he has no idea who Imaizumi is. He knows everyone else on Sohoku, but he's never heard of Imaizumi. And so
Right.
I thought it was a funny sequence. It's sort of one of those that like is less funny when we talk about it.
Yeah, kind of.
But when
Again, I think what made that work was the presentation of it, because
totally.
it's really less about the punchline and more about the delivery of it. And again, when you have this, because they're still playing Ode to Joy, because this is supposed to be his evil stare down of the two of them, and they broke it for just a moment.
Yeah.
Because like they just halt the music as soon as he refers to Imaizumi as Onoda.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's that stop that makes the joke work.
No, I agree. No, it was. I enjoyed it. Do you have any? I guess the one thing that I was confused about was Ashikiba kept referring to the fact that like he hadn't been able to race, and he hadn't been since because he's a second year, but he hadn't been able to race his entire first year of high school. Like, and he's so grateful that the seniors let him finally race again. Um, did you have any thoughts on that, or like why you would go to a high school where you're not allowed to race?
I don't really see much of that because again, I kind of figure that they're going to explain that later. I guess it's kind of one of those things where they're trying to come up with an excuse why he wasn't on the Hakone team to begin with.
Oh, yeah.
Like at the inner high, it's kind of one of those. Well, I had to think of a new character to go up to be a good rival for Teshima since I haven't really built him up yet. Speaking as the author.
Yeah.
And then but he has to. It's like okay, but I need to have some reason why he wasn't. So I don't know. He wasn't allowed to ride.
Yeah, he was training
And
in
I'll
secret.
figure out the reason later.
Yeah, exactly. That kind of does sound like a manga thing.
Yeah, a little bit. My only real complaint was that they had. I am sorry, but we kind of touched on this last episode. Kinjo has always been a bit of a weak point of the series.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't particularly like the sequence in the car with him. I thought that kind of... I get kind of sick of him being able to read every single situation completely perfectly. And I think the line that got me was the fact it's like, Onoda's only writing at about 30% right now. Based on what?
Yeah.
So
like,
is he
he's
only
in
at like
third.
yeah. Like how do you judge that as a metric?
Yeah. You just say it really confidently, that's how.
Yeah, apparently. And it's kind of... It wouldn't bother me if they had treated it like a joke, like they did with Ashikiba referring to Amaizumi.
Yeah.
But I don't know. The fact that it's kind of one of those things that they actually somewhat expect us to take it seriously.
Yeah.
Like, you do have a sense of... Like, Yowamushi Pedal does kind of have a sense of humor about itself sometimes, but it's like, you're not really selling that line to me.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I totally bought his reasoning that, like, Teshima can't keep up because he's a bad cyclist. Okay.
Right.
Okay. Like, I don't know how much that's been proven. So Teshima can't possibly win this race because he's a bad cyclist. But what he can do is inspire Onoda because Teshima's bad, but he's doing well. That will inspire Onoda and make him be even better. It's like, I don't know how much better you get off watching someone else be good. It feels a little bit like fake anime logic.
Yeah, it's a bit of a... There's a TV trope, or there's a trope called the Xanatos Gambit, which is basically you do something completely insane and hope that it pays off. And hope that it pays off in the end. So it's like, in this case, the Xanatos Gambit would be throwing Teshima in this race.
Yeah.
Because you're expecting him to lose, which will then inspire Onoda. Yeah. And it's just like...
That's not how life works, mostly. But, yeah.
Right. But it's like, it's supposed to kind of prove the soul of their team. And how, it's like... Because Onoda's always been their wild card, so he has to do something to inspire him. And it's like... I don't... that doesn't really work. But, I mean, besides that, I think it was still a pretty fun episode. I really like Ashikiba as being a villain. I wouldn't mind seeing him continue to return as a recurring villain for the series.
Well, I mean, hardly. I think he's probably going to end up being more of a rival than a villain, but yeah.
Well, you know what I mean.
Yes. So, speaking of things we know that we also like March Comes In Like a Lion. So, I'm going to talk about episode 15?
Yes, 15.
For real this time?
For realsies.
Okay, good. So the episode starts off with a flashback of Kyoko, Rei's adoptive sister, sneaking into Rei's bed, spooning him, and telling him not to touch her, which is, evidence of someone who's definitely fine. Anyway, and so Rei then goes into some sort of self-analysis, self-criticism. He talks about how she was broken by the way that he and his adoptive father treated her, and he blames himself for her destructive relationship with Goto. Of course, this is being set up at the same time that Goto and Shimada are facing off in the semifinals of the tournament, and Rei is able to leave class and go watch the game. Shimada tries a new style but ends up losing his first match, but turns out it's best 2 out of 3, so that's okay. And in the second match, Shimada is actually able to win after what appeared to be 11 hours. And then you see a flashback of Nikaido talking about how he'd never lost before he met Rei as a child. And he was thankful to have lost that match to Rei and seeing that, there are stronger people out there, and that's what he wanted Rei to learn from Shimada beating him. So it would inspire him to sort of get a fresh start. And then you leave off the episode seeing Goto once again with Kyoko, but abandoning her on the curb as he is often wont to do.
Yep.
Though the one thing I want to say about this episode is, as I was watching it, I felt like there was so much content, and I know I sort of breezed over it, but it felt like there was so much in it, I couldn't believe it was only 22 minutes long.
Right. I guess my big takeaway from it was Kyoko has been propped up as being a villain
Mm-hmm.
throughout the entire series. Like, she's kind of like this, this kind of scheming, she's trying to get inside Ray's head. This episode kind of showed it as Kyoko is, like, Ray was the one who accidentally got in Kyoko's head.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And
and he clearly blames himself for it.
Right, like, it was kind of interesting to kind of see, like, Kyoko is not really that evil. She has been completely broken as a person, though.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought this episode went a long way to making her a very sympathetic character.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's interesting to see it from Ray's perspective too, because he talked a couple of times about how he has this recurring thing of how he left home because he wanted to be an adult, right?
Right.
And he did, even though he's still 16 or whatever, he wanted to be an adult, and he thought that if he could go out on his own and be an adult, then he could protect Kyoko. But he realized that, of course, that's not how she felt. Like, when he left home, she felt like, it was just one more person in her life that was abandoning her. And then he realized,
Right.
like, I didn't help her. I made it worse.
Not only that, but she kind of feels it like, because I was about to leave, I essentially drove you out of this household.
Right.
Like, you aren't doing this because this is something you want to do. You're doing this because you feel responsible for me.
Well, yeah, and because that was the thing, is she said that she was gonna run away from home or leave home or whatever, and Ray insisted, no, like, I'll leave home so you don't have to. I'll leave home.
Right.
If I'm not around here to create the pressure, you can be and you can be around your father, and it'll be better if I'm gone. And of course, that it wasn't, because that was just one more child that was abandoning the family. It couldn't possibly make things better for her.
Right. And yeah, I mean, I like the fact that Ray at least sort of has the introspection to realize that, you know, maybe I did actually break her. Because she even mentions, like, look, you and Dad think I'm, like, you guys think you're being nice to me by telling me that, it's like, oh, there's more to world than just shogi, but you yourselves don't believe that.
Yeah. Clearly, by the way you live your lives, shogi's the most important thing. So when you tell me that it doesn't matter if I'm bad at shogi, even though I want to keep playing, you're telling me that, like, I'm not good enough.
Right.
And we'd seen some of that before, but I guess she became a lot more sympathetic.
Right. Well, because before it was kind of like, you kind of assumed it was something along the... Because before she was really only putting blame on Coda, her father.
Mm-hmm.
Like, or from what we were seeing. But now we're seeing she's like, no, Ray, you are just as complacent in this. Like, you're trying to tell me this garbage too, and you clearly don't believe it. Which also kind of sets up this weird thing, like... So she kind of is... Because, as you mentioned before during the summary, at night, she was sneaking into Ray's room, and not necessarily, like... She was basically, like, getting into them and basically cuddling him by telling him, like, also, you're not allowed to touch me.
Right.
And, it almost feels like she's seeing, like, her father in Ray.
Well, yeah, I think there's definitely grounds for interpretation there with how she perceives Ray's relation to her father and
Right.
how she sees Goto as sort of another substitute for her father.
Right, because Goto's kind of an oldish man.
Well, he's an oldish man. He's also one of the best shogi players in the country. And he'll, he doesn't love her, clearly, but he is willing to string her along.
Right. I thought that was interesting, based off of... Because we kind of see how he leaves the shogi parlor, like, in both ways. Like, the first time when he loses, or when he wins, he sort of allows Kyoko to sort of attach herself to it.
Right.
like, he walks away, he still refers to her as a stalker, but, she kind of runs up and kind of, like, grabs him by the arm, and, he doesn't push her away or anything like that.
Yeah.
Then the second time when he loses, he's, like, shoving her away and basically, like, he doesn't even respond to her. He's just like, get out of my way.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't want to deal with you right now. It's like, I'm not in the mood to put up with you right now.
Mm-hmm.
Which kind of puts him as being this man who, like, he sees people as something that he can use. He's kind of like the Sun King almost. Like, when I'm happy, everybody else is allowed to be happy around me.
Mm.
But, like, once I'm upset, you all better stay away from me. I don't need you people.
Yeah. And, I mean, it'll be... I'm excited to see that match conclude and see, sort of what the effect would be if he loses. I think Goto's going to lose. What do you think?
I don't know. Like, it almost seems so perfect to me to have Goto win, and then he goes on and, like, goes up even against, oh my god,
Soya.
why can't I think? Soya, yeah, thank you. Goes up against Soya and even beats him. And then suddenly Ray has this whole drive. Like, now, like, his goal isn't even Soya anymore. Like, Goto has almost perverted that goal that he has.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
But that almost seems a little too cliched, because at the same time, it would make sense for, like, Soya to basically... It would be a good chance to kind of show how Goto was wrong. Ray can still get his sort of, like, satisfaction in watching him lose.
Yeah, I mean, I think that would come from Goto going up against him and getting, demolished, right?
Right.
So then I think, the narrative might shift where you get a direct focus on Soya, because, we're in the second half of this show, and clearly there's going to be some thematic crescendo that involves Soya somehow.
Right.
But we just have to get it there where it's earned, and we're clearly not there yet.
Yeah, basically. And I mean, the show only has about 7 episodes left?
Well, I think it's 24, so...
I thought it was 22 episodes.
Is it 22? Well, it has between 6 and 8 episodes left. We'll double check. But yeah, so speaking of another show that has between 6 and 8 or more episodes left, do you want to discuss All Out?
By all means. Okay, so that one's on me. Not really a big episode. This was kind of a calm before the storm, I feel like. The entire plot of this episode is that Sekizan and Hachi are going out to lunch with Coach Shingo. They got invited out. They run into Hoakari and Rie, who's the manager of the Keijo team. Apparently, the two of them have become friends and are out shopping with one another. And they run into Sekizan, and then because they stop them, Gion and Iwa run into them, and Gion wants to join them for lunch, and Sekizan's like, we can't make special privileges for you. So Gion gets the great idea to call everybody up and have them meet at Coach Shingo's house for a free lunch.
Yeah, because, I mean, what Sekizan says is like, well, I can't just invite you if not everyone's invited. So Gion's like, I can fix that.
And so, Coach Shingo initially isn't going to let them come in, but then his wife is super excited to see them there. And then it's just kind of a general slice of life thing where everybody's kind of meeting up there. The interesting thing is that Yoshida even stops by as well. He and Shingo kind of have a nice little chat, sort of developing a friendship there. And Shingo kind of makes the speech about how, their training camp is going to be crazy. Effectively it's like, hey, we're going to have to, like, train really hard here, so get ready, everybody. And then that's kind of where the episode ends.
Yeah.
Not a big episode.
No. Nothing to complain about, though.
Yeah, not really anything to complain about. It's just kind of like, there's not really a whole lot going on here. Again, I think the most interesting aspect was the coach and Yoshida kind of meeting up and talking for the first time again, and Shingo kind of like stretches out to Yoshida. He's like, hey, you can come with us if you want. I don't mind. And initially Yoshida is kind of like, maybe not. But then after his speech, like, Shingo even mentions, like, I know this place that I go to every time I do this training camp for a beer. Why don't you come with me?
Yeah, and I think Yoshida, he's sort of taken aback by the fact that even when he's at the coach's home, he's offered a beer, and he's like, "Oh, what, me? Not like, I don't know."
No. I'm good. I'm good.
Uh,
But yeah, I guess the interesting part about this is it seems like Yoshida is slowly being accepted just as a part of the team now.
well, and that's the thing. It didn't just start with the lunch, because earlier that day he had unlocked the club room and stuff, and he was helping a few of the members of the team practice.
Right.
And he was sort of acting like, yeah, well, just make sure you lock. He was trying to be hard about it, but clearly he was more comfortable being involved. And what I like is that in the last, since Yoshida sort of came around and decided that rugby was worth watching again,
Right.
they've involved him, but they've involved him in small ways. They haven't ever had a character go like, "Oh wow, Yoshida Sensei, you sure are a lot nicer now and more willing to be involved in small but meaningful ways." Like, he just did it, which it shouldn't be complex,
Right.
but it is. It doesn't always happen that way.
It's a nice little subtle bit of character growth for him, and it's starting to pay off now. It's a nice little character arc that we're getting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the other new character we got Yoshida wasn't new, but in terms of development, the only significant development we got to spend some time with the coach's wife, Yumi.
Right.
So you had a very positive impression of Yumi-chan, didn't you?
I kind of love Yumi.
Yeah.
Nothing really seems to get her down, and she just seems to be so genuinely happy to have all these young high school boys around.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny a little bit because there's kind of this element of like she's not really like that into. She's kind of she feels almost like a bit of a stand-in for a fangirl, but she's a little older, so there's not just this overt like, oh my god, hot guys. But there's kind of just this little twinge of her being like, ooh, you have all these like muscly men around, like honey, thank you so much.
Yeah. But like
And
they're cute, but also like she feels like sort of very maternal,
right.
and you know, it's not just the squeeing. So I like that it was a little more complex.
Right. And I kind of love at the end of the episode because they have this. She and her husband are having this discussion because he doesn't really want her to come along on this training camp. Just because it's like, look, honey, you're not going to have anything to do. But, she gets kind of bitter and upset. And then she turns on the TV and she gets distracted by a baby seal.
Yeah, I didn't necessarily love that. I mean, it was kind of a little bit of like, you know women, right?
Yeah, I admit. I admit, though, I laughed.
Yeah, I mean, I liked the fact that she like lost her mind at it. Like, oh,
right, like,
what is that? It's
like
so cute.
just
It's so cute. It's so cute. What is it? What is it? It's so cute. So yeah, it was funny, but also like,
yeah, I know what you mean. It does kind of have that element of women. Am I right?
yeah. Luckily, the show does not rely on that very often. And it doesn't have many female characters, but it's very respectful towards the female characters it does
Right.
have.
Well, I mean, when they're around, I thought it was kind of interesting that apparently their team manager Hoakari and Rie, the team manager of Keijo, I kind of thought that was interesting that they seem to have formed something of a friendship where they're doing things just after school and after team meetings.
I think that's as much because it's a lot easier to do that than introduce another female character for
Right.
any of them to be friends with. Just use the two that you have.
Most sports series still kind of do that. Like, again, like with Yowamushi Pedal, like Miki has her friend, her kind of like cynical friend that she has.
Oh yeah, I forgot about her.
Or even or Yowamushi or Haikyuu has Yachi and Shimizu. So I mean, there's still like
who are both team managers.
Both team managers, I know, but Yachi was kind of added in later. The point is, a lot of series still kind of go that extra step to try and introduce more girls for the team manager to be friends with,
Yeah.
like at the school. So I thought it was kind of interesting that it kind of shows that these are two teams that, despite how maybe contentious and they can be, and the rivalry, there still is kind of that element of friendship there, and they communicate that I think well enough just by having Hoakari and Rie be pals.
Yeah, I agree. Maybe I think the last big thing I wanted to bring up on this, I don't know what else you have, is that I really can. Oh well, this isn't new per se, but I continue to appreciate the way that the coach refers to their training. He's like, a lot of series could talk about like, this training camp is so important. You're gonna go out there and win and prove to everyone that you're the best. He doesn't say that. He says, this is an opportunity for you to try a lot of new things, see what works and see what doesn't work, and learn from it.
Yeah.
So
it's kind of presenting a more healthy look at, like, sports. It's good for you guys to go all out, but remember, this is your experience. These are still your high school years. Mm-hmm. This isn't about just conquering and, being the best. It's an educational experience. It's about how you people grow as people.
Also, these games don't count for anything, so don't worry whether you win or lose. Worry if you're learning something.
Right.
So, like, you can contrast it to a deeply inferior show like Days, where they convince that they go to these training camps and they play all these games and they like lose their minds with how, and they get themselves literally injured because they're so desperate to win training camp games because they convince themselves it's the most important thing.
Right.
And that's a very unhealthy attitude to have. Whereas this show is like, no, like, practice games are for practicing and like trying new stuff and learning, and so just do that. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I just wanted to also bring up one thing since we're kind of on the speech anyway. The thing I liked about the speech, is that he kind of even applies a little bit of game theory there, because he even mentions, like, look, most games are actually probably decided before the match even begins.
Right.
Like, it's all about preparation here. And I guess I kind of appreciate that, just on the basis that, playing a lot of games and attempting to play a lot of, like, strategy games, on occasion, or, like, looking into, like, different competitive games. Like, one of the big ones I tried to was Pokemon back in the day. Like, yeah, a lot of games, when you get into it, you already kind of have an algorithm, like, laid out in your head as to what you're going to do. Because, a lot of, like, sports series, they try and play it, it's like, no, it's like the game's not decided until the very end of the match. Like, no, he even mentions, look, it's going to be decided. It's all based on your mentality and how you prep for it.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, again, that was a bit more of a unique take on it. It's a bit more of a pragmatic view of the sport.
I agree. It's, not the most meaningful episode, but a fun one.
Yeah.
If we can move on to an episode that was the opposite of that. Well, in that it was also not meaningful, but very much not fun. Tiger Mask. Tiger Mask episode 16. So, the episode starts off with all of the NJPW wrestlers on a couple of buses. And at first I thought, are they going to a training camp? Is that what's happening? Anyway, so you don't know where they're going. They're going on a training camp, and there's a promoter from Mexico who's talking to the head of the NJPW and trying to get Tiger Mask to wrestle in Mexico. And then she kicks him in the testicles when he says that he can't do that. And that just doesn't go addressed. Anyway, eventually she gets a hold of Haruna and offers Haruna 50,000 per match. 50,000 what? She doesn't say. And Haruna says, okay, I assume that's dollars. They end up getting to their destination, and it turns out it's a rural village where there are no young people, so they decided to put on a wrestling match to revitalize the community. Okay. And they do that by having all the wrestlers go to a hot spring and then taking pictures of them naked without their permission and sending it to all the other villages to attract old women to come watch them wrestle. And they find out about that, and they're like, well, you gotta do what you gotta do, even if it involves invading our privacy. Meanwhile, Haruna and Tiger Mask decide it would be fun to explore an old abandoned schoolhouse. They are stalked by the Mexican wrestler, who is the son of this Mexican wrestling promoter, and his name is the Saboten, and his mission is to attack Tiger Mask so that he can win their match later in the day, and they can force Tiger Mask to go to Mexico. But it turns into a Looney Tunes cartoon, and Saboten just keeps jumping into stuff and hitting his head and falling out of third-story windows with no consequences. Eventually, they do have a wrestling match, and the Saboten faces Tiger Mask, and he sneak attacks him, but Tiger Mask is too good, and he's about to win when suddenly the Saboten's mother throws the Saboten a cactus, a full cactus, his secret weapon, and he swings to hit Tiger Mask, but he accidentally hits his mother, and she has a bunch of needles in her butt, and she chases him out of the ring, and Tiger Mask wins. And it ends with the Mexican wrestling promoter proposing marriage to the village mayor because he'd make a good promoter. I know that summary went long. There's like so much more in this episode that just defies belief.
So I just want to bring up one thing. There's something that's so weird about this episode, and I mean, you covered most of that pretty well in there about what's weird. For the first half of the episode, they don't show the face of the mother.
Yeah.
Like, the camera keeps obscuring her eyes. Like, we still get shots of, like, her chest, or we'll sometimes see, like, her lips. And I thought what they were doing, they were trying to conceal the fact that this was supposed to be, like, Miss X.
That's what I thought, too. I was watching with my fiance, and she's like, she saw, like, all those shots, and she's like, okay, so that you can't see her face, but you can see she has big breasts. Who else has big breasts and would have Miss a reason X. To have a secret identity? It's definitely Miss X with a wig on, right? And then eventually, halfway through the episode, she turns around and you see her face, and it's just a random character.
Right. Like, I get the feeling that maybe they had a different direction that they were going to go with in this episode, and then, like, partway through, they changed their minds or ran into some issues.
Yeah, and it was too late.
Like, maybe they couldn't get the voice actress for her, because I know we had mentioned this before, that she's kind of like a, she's kind of a big-name voice actress that they got from Miss X, so maybe they couldn't, like, maybe they were going to try and make that this character, but then they couldn't afford her or something.
Or she was unavailable. Yeah.
Yeah, it was just... It was such a weird thing for them to try and keep it a secret all this time, but...
That there was no secret.
She was nobody.
Yeah. It was, like, this episode just... I mean, it didn't do anything. There was no plot in it. It was all completely random. And it felt like none of these characters would do any of these things. Why are all these characters going on a bus trip to rural Japan to, like, work out in an old gym for, like, these are highly paid celebrities. Why would they... Also, like, why would they only have 2 buses for, like, what appeared to be 40 guys? I mean, there's so many questions.
Right. Then there's the fact that they have this very extended sequence before they go into like the main house where, you know, they're like into the main hotel that they're all going to be staying at. And what happens is, like, they have this very long drawn out sequence where Ryu is commenting like, "Oh, it's going to be old women and they're going to have all this food." It's like they're going to have like just like this very boring meal, and they're like, and they keep putting, and then like the village elder is like, he keeps saying like, oh, like old women, but they keep putting it in quotes. Not only that, but he has to throw in the fact that they murdered a couple of deer for them. I don't even know what the point of that was.
I think that was to say that, like, we don't just have like boiled vegetables, we also have venison. And they're like,
Right.
whoa!
Yeah, but it's like they keep, like, and there's just this long build-up to finally reveal who these people who are cooking for them are.
And
And, it's like, okay, so what they're going to do is they're going to turn around and it's going to be a bunch of cute young girls.
Nope.
And it'd be like, yeah, oh yeah, no, we got girls here, yay! No, they're all old women, and the food is about what Ryu was expecting.
Yeah, it was...
They had a bit more of a buffet than they were anticipating, and there you go!
Yeah, and they just say, like, man, oh man, I never thought I'd eat such good food in a rural village. And I'm like, man, like, what does this show have against rural Japan?
Or Mexico, for that matter.
Yeah.
They didn't...
One thing I didn't mention was that, so the Saboten, who's this Mexican wrestler who's there for some reason,
Yeah.
Like, he can't form complete sentences. He just refers to, like, me am going to do that. He talks like a caveman.
Yeah.
For no explained reason.
Like, the only thing we could theorize is that, like, especially because he has this, like, absurdly close relationship with his mother, it's like, is this, like, a Japanese stereotype of Mexicans? Like...
Yeah, or is it that, like... Maybe, I mean, he was clearly supposed to be stupid, but is it that, like, oh, he's too stupid to learn Japanese correctly? Like,
Right.
I don't know. It was...
But, I mean, it can't just be that, because, so one of the very stupidest things he does is that he's gonna, like, basically his mother tells him to follow Tiger Mask and injure him before the match. And he brings, like, a frying pan with him, and, like, he starts following them up the stairs, like Tiger Mask and Haruna. And they're like, hey, what are you doing with that frying pan? And he's like, this is special training. I just keep hitting myself in the head with a frying pan. And then he knocks himself out.
Yeah, hilarious,
it's like,
right?
Oh, yeah, super funny. It's like, I don't understand what you're even doing here.
Yeah,
Like,
it was the worst episode of Tiger Mask, which
right.
says a lot.
Yeah, oh my god. Just the other thing I wanted to bring up was that as soon as the Mexican promoter told Haruna 500,000, and Haruna didn't know what it was, just assumed it was dollars, I was just immediately like, it's gonna be either yen or pesos.
Yeah, like, it's definitely pesos.
Like, oh, and it's like, oh, that's not very much per match, and it's just like, you could have just clarified what she was saying, Haruna. Like,
yeah, I mean, it was such a stupid setup. Like, 50,000, I assume, dollars, eh? Like,
yeah.
This one, it felt simultaneously like a very poorly written kids show, but also like something you would never want to show your kids because of the way it characterized the Mexican promoter.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't want to go too much
we don't have to go into it because it was just sort of like upset. Like, I don't know. Tiger Mask can be fun. That's so.
Right.
I think I just want to wrap up on this. Tiger Mask can be fun when it's campy, and when it's silly, and when it like has a little bit of fun with its own premise. This wasn't fun. This was just random and kind of gross, and pointless, and it had no bearing on the plot whatsoever.
Right, and I mean, Mr. Bigfoot didn't either, but also, this is just something that just occurred to me. Why was Mr. Bigfoot, like, more articulate than the Saboten?
Right, yeah, exactly.
Like, yeah, it's like, there was a character that you could do who you could justify speaking like a caveman.
Yeah, because he dressed like a caveman.
He dressed like a caveman and was basically as smart as one, but he was still more eloquent than the Saboten.
Yeah. Also, why is his name the Saboten?
Yeah, that's just got to be something we don't understand.
Yeah, well, there's a lot I don't understand about Tiger Mask.
Okay, fair enough.
Let's move on to a show that is much more full of joy. Minami Kamakura High School Girls Cycling Club.
Okay, so this episode begins with a party for Shiki, who the girls asked to be their advisor for the club.
Of course.
And then apparently the club needs a cook, so they have Higa do it. Anyway, so the swimming club finds out about how Higa isn't going to join their team. She's going to join the cycling team. And so their kind of club head, their captain or ace, I wasn't really quite sure about who she was supposed to be.
Yeah.
She was super talented, though.
Uh-huh.
Her name is Hiroko, and she challenges Hiromi to a match, to a cycling match, to race to the top of the hill in exchange for Higa. And they do that. Hiromi almost wins, but Hiroko pulls up at the very end to win the match. But then at the end, she's like, "Oh no, that's fine. I don't care. Higa can join." And Higa goes, "Yeah, I mean, I wasn't going to join them anyway. I appreciate you fighting for me so hard, though." And then the episode ends, and then we get to the AOP section where they talk about items to make their ride more comfortable, and we learn about arm mirrors. We also learned about the phone holder, which is a must-buy. And then also bike computers, which displays relevant info. And it's really good for girls because girls love to know about how their calorie intake.
Oh my gosh, it's so gross. Oh, I hate this show. I love it. I love it, but it's oh man.
It's embarrassing.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so what were your big takeaways from Minami Kamakura episode 4?
This episode made no sense.
Yeah, I know.
Okay, so like we have this whole setup about how it's like, no, the girls have to fight to keep like Higa on their team. And it's like, Higa even has a line that is like, that just blows my mind because they get to the race and, they're like, "Oh no, I have to fight to keep Higa on the team." And then Higa says like, "It's my fault that this is happening." And it's like, yeah, of course it is. Of course it's your fault. Just say no!
Yeah.
It's like you don't have to join!
Yeah, no one can coerce you into joining the swim team against your will. Like,
And
you have to know that.
And it's like, the funny thing is, at the end of the episode, they even address that because she was like, "I wasn't even going to join them anyway, but I appreciate you doing that." Then what was the point of this episode?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think...
They got to see a pretty view at the top of the hill.
And they got to learn how gear shifting works. I think that was part of it, to, like, get Hiromi on a road bike so that she could learn how to shift.
This is the type of episode you have after the characters are already established. Like, we are on episode 4, and the girls have not gone on a ride in, like, since near the beginning of the show.
Well,
like, not since episode 2.
Yeah.
Like, and not only that, but it's like, no, we have to do this to save Higa. And all I'm thinking is, who's Higa?
Yeah, also the only reason, like, the swim team just assumed Higa would join because she's a pretty good swimmer and she swam in the pool one time. And so they're like, "Oh, don't you want to swim on the team?" And she's like, "No." And they're like, Alright. You could have summed up the whole episode with that. Like, Higa chose not to join the swim club. Where are we at the end of the episode that we were not at the beginning of the episode?
Right. Like, everything we know about, like, this doesn't add anything about any of the characters.
Yeah.
I mean, these are, like, he is also somebody that Hiromi just met.
Yeah.
Like, why does she care that much to, like, save Higa from the swim club?
I mean, I get it because, like, they're trying to start a new club and they need every person they can get, but, like, you've known each other for 2 days. Like, don't
This is another thing I was just thinking of, because the club technically hasn't formed yet. They only just got Shiki to be their advisor, and without an advisor, the club actually can't exist.
Yeah. Another issue is that why can't Higa do both? I mean,
right.
Like, I get that, if they were both sports teams, that would be one thing. But, I mean, these girls can't even refer to themselves as the cycling club because they're like, "Oh, I don't want to get too narrow. We're just the bicycle club." Right. So they have no goals, no plans. They don't know what it's not like they're like, "Oh, we need to train for the race." They're just like, "We need to be involved with bicycles somehow." You could probably go to a swim meet on the weekend too.
Right. Like, and not only that, it's like, we still have barely seen these girls as, like, a cycling unit. Like, okay, we talk bad on Long Riders, and it's a bad show. It's an awful show. Right from the beginning of the series, these were girls with a sole purpose to go out and ride bikes together. And we saw that.
Mm-hmm.
Did it really have any purpose? No, but we still saw it.
They still did it in most episodes.
They still did it in most episodes. There was still kind of this sense that bicycles were an important part of the show. This just kind of feels like a serious take on like something like Teekyu.
Mm.
Where it's like, yeah, they're technically part of a cycling club, but cycling is not really that important of an aspect of their group. But you'd show that by showing the connection between the characters. But again, it feels like the characters still just met. They haven't really formed together. They're not really learning anything about one another.
Yeah. So another similarity of the Long Riders is at one point in this episode, Tomoe's younger sister comes by and she's talking.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, she's talking to the four girls and she's like, "Hey, by the way, I designed team uniforms for you." And they're like, "Wait, what?" And they're like, "Well, you can't be a club if you don't have uniforms. Here's the design I made." And it's this intensely intricate design made on a tablet by like an 11-year-old. And okay, I guess if you want me to suspend my disbelief for that. And
Yeah.
they all look at it and they're like, "It's cute. It's pink. It has hearts. I like it. This is our uniform now." And everyone said, "Yes, this is our uniform now." And there was no conflict. There were no questions. Like, Long Riders did a lot of things poorly. I would say most things poorly. To its credit, they like sat around and discussed what they wanted to be on their uniforms and what they wanted their team name to be. Whereas these girls are just like, "Oh, the first thing we've ever seen? Good enough."
Yeah, it's like there's no journey to this.
Yeah.
To this, there's like they have plots to the episode, which is an advantage it does have over Long Riders. But there's still like
there's no conflict.
There's nothing that they earn in this series. There's nothing that they really like shoot for.
Well, yeah, I mean the same way with like the conflict in this episode is like, oh, who's gonna get Higa? This bike race is gonna determine it. And then Hiromi loses, but there are no consequences to her losing. They're like, oh, well, we can't actually make someone join the swim club. Have a good day. And Azuma, the swim team captain, she just says at the end, she's like, well, if there's one thing I've learned swimming, it's that you need to have a lot of new experiences. We're like, again, with people insisting we have lots of new experiences.
These girls spend a lot of time talking about what they're going to learn from cycling.
Yeah, not much
without
time
actually
cycling.
doing it. Which I guess in a way it reminds us of it reminds me of when we were back in the day when we were little kids talking about the awesome fan fiction we were going to write, but never actually doing any writing.
I guess. Yeah.
Like, I get the same sense. Like, they keep talking about, it's like, all of the stuff they're going to do that's going to be awesome with the cycling club.
We're going to ride around Hokkaido.
Yeah, we're going to ride up to Hokkaido. We're going to ride to other islands. Like, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, great, can we see some of that?
Yeah, and then in the next scene, they're like, I need to buy a bike.
And I don't know. This show is just really frustrating. I don't know. Long Riders didn't make me. Well, no, I'm sure I can go back and watch.
Long Riders made me real frustrated. It was painful to watch.
That's true. It's kind of one of those things though, where I'm going back on it and looking. It's like, the grass is always greener.
Yeah, it's hard to say. I enjoy neither of them, but they're bad in different ways. So, right. Speaking of something different, do you want to?
Real quick, there was one other thing I wanted to address.
But I was about to segue so hard.
I know. I'm sorry, but there was one other baffling thing that was. So one of the things that they talk about with Hiroko is that the reason she's on the swim team is that she used to play volleyball, but she switched to swimming because she injured her knee.
Okay, fair enough. But
is it?
I mean, yeah, it's just because like you don't from all the jumping, at a certain point you have. Like, swimming is more low impact on your knees.
Okay, fair enough.
What bothered...
I kind of took that as... It's like, well, she had a leg injury, so why is that suddenly not an issue in the swim team? But I guess that's fair.
Yeah, I would think it was just a joint thing where because there's no actual... you're not actually landing on your knees, it doesn't take as much damage. The one issue I had with that is that... shortly right after that they're like, oh yeah, I saw you biking the other day because I was running. It's like Wait, so like, can you put pressure on your knee, or?
I'm kind of confused about the mechanics of this.
Yeah, I mean, it might be one of those things where her knee healed, but she decided she liked swimming better. But none of that was explained, so it all seemed kind of silly and random.
Right.
So speaking of silly and random, would you like to discuss TQ season 3?
Okay, sure thing. I'm actually covering it this week, or I'm summarizing it, or doing the best I can.
Right.
So this week we saw in TQ, there was less of a focus on Marimo than I was anticipating. She's kind of faded out
Yeah.
a little bit. They still have an episode that's devoted to her later in the season, but there was not nearly as many. There weren't nearly as many connected episodes this time. They were all
Yeah.
pretty standalone.
Standalone.
Um, it wasn't what it was still pretty good. I'm sad you didn't get to watch the entire season because episode 11 was amazing because they were parodying sports anime in that one, and that was really the highlight of it. They even changed the opening so that it would actually play out more like an actual sports series opening.
Oh yeah, no, I have actually. I wasn't able to get through all of TQ because some other stuff came up today, but I have actually watched the first few seasons of TQ before, so I'd seen it already.
Oh, okay, okay. Yeah, I had forgotten about that.
Anyway.
Uh, so I really appreciated that sequence, especially like my favorite part during that new opening was like how they even had like the characters in shadow that are all building up to the mountain. Like that's the sort of like imagery that I associate with so many sports series, even
Yeah.
indirectly. I thought they did a really great job capturing that feel. I also love that they keep making up special moves that Nasuno uses.
Well, I mean, Kanae used the Kamehameha wave.
Oh, that's true, but that was in an earlier episode.
That's true.
That was also I actually wasn't sure if that was meant to be a Kamehameha or not. But I suppose that's the
I think
case.
they used like a knockoff, like a very similar phrase, like Kanehaneha or something.
Yeah, it was something like that.
Yeah.
That was in like the second episode. I want to say it was
Mm-hmm.
the one where when the city was being flooded.
Yeah. What one funny thing they did in this season too was that they kept advertising their own stuff in the middle of the
Oh
episode.
yeah.
They were like, "Oh, hey, looks like we got done early. We might as well hawk our own Blu-rays." And they keep like I mean, one episode when they have an episode where they all go and get their hair cut.
Right.
And Nasuno's like, "Oh yeah, I think I'd like my hair the same way it is in Volume 3 of TQ."
Right. Yeah. The show is very. I mean, it's easy to say self-aware because self-aware comedy is not new. I guess with how brazen it is about how they handle it, I think that's what makes it work.
Yeah.
Like this is a series that kind of doesn't care.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It like this is a show that it's kind of hard to describe. Um, it's very much like a controlled chaos. Like they're clearly just throwing out whatever like the first gag that comes to their head.
So
Like the writers.
here's a question I have. Do you think it works better if you watch a season all at once or if you like space it out?
I think it works better if I like watching a season all in one, just because like it's fun for like a quick gag or two. Watching it like watching just like a single episode, a single 2 minute episode.
Yeah.
I don't know if I would even remember it as well though if I didn't like have it like in a chunk.
Yeah.
At the same time though, the length of the episodes is kind of the series' best strength.
Mm-hmm.
Because again, they don't have time to drag out jokes or to like wait for the applause. They kind of just keep moving through gags.
Yeah.
And so it's like
I thought it. I mean, I wasn't able to get to the last couple because we had to start recording. But it pretty much is consistent quality. If you like the first two seasons, you'll probably like season 3.
Right.
I'm looking forward to seeing how the tone changes, if at all, as we get to the end. But
Something I did notice this season, I feel like the gags are actually getting increasingly complex. Or maybe I just got the gags a little better. Like there's a gag during the one when they're staying at Kanoe's house during the flood, and they have this gag where it's like, oh, we're doing the shower sequence, and then the show very coyly burns out the power. It's like, oh, sorry guys, the power's out, can't watch this scene.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, that's kind of funny. But then they bring the gag full circle because the power does go back on.
Yeah, and then they're just naked.
And they're just naked there.
Yeah, they're not being sly about it. They're just naked.
Yeah, and not only that, but it also plays into the world. It's just like, no. Yeah, no. The only reason we're not showing you this is because the power's out.
Yeah. No.
And I thought that was kind of, it's like, this joke is going in a cycle, and it's interesting to watch.
Yeah.
Just a couple other gags I really enjoyed, real quick. I got a real big kick out of the store where they have to go to the racket store to get Konoe's racket fixed, and they go to the 5th or 6th best store for repairing rackets. They're not really sure.
Yeah.
There was a pretty funny. So there was a gag that I really enjoyed, also like in episode 6, that I thought was kind of a funny shot at like a lot of Japanese mobile game issues, which is because it's the one where they're trying to help the baker out with his store.
Yeah.
And trying to help, and they have the cake thing, and they're talking about how they're going to be able to sell the cake, and they start discussing how they're going to sell it as an app, and but make the sexy cake the rare item.
Yeah.
And again, it's kind of one of those things. It's like, man, that's just such a quick gag, and it's such a quick burn against like it's a genre of game like the Mobage games, which are basically kind of the randomized games where you keep throwing in money just to get like the special item in the game, and a lot of times, yeah, they use the sexy girl pictures as the rare item.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Teekyu remains itself. I think that's my summary.
I don't have a problem with that. The first season I thought was slightly rough, but I'm looking forward to it more and more every week.
I think it's just because the first season had to introduce it had to introduce how the world worked. And so once that's established, they can have fun with it.
Yeah, exactly. I would also like to just point out one thing. There was one episode. So one of the themes of the series is that every episode begins with a vaguely related movie reference.
Mm-hmm.
Like not even subtle. They just say the name of the movie and then just say with senpai.
Right. So like 8 Mile with senpai or something. It has nothing to do.
That was the one I was gonna bring up.
Yeah, of course.
Just because it's like, who remembers the fictional retelling of the M&M story?
Well, I think a lot of people... I recognize the name of it, but what it had to do with the episode and...
Yeah, I don't know.
Who's watching it in Japan, I don't know.
The other one I remember was that they actually did bring up, in one episode, they actually
Rashomon.
brought it around. It was in the one with the... it was in the haircutting episode. They brought up the... it was Rashomon with Senpai, and they actually brought up Rashomon in the episode.
Yeah.
And I thought that was kind of funny because, like, every other time it's just been like, it's like they're never going to mention it or bring it up in the episode. But no, just one time they can make the excuse of, no, we see, look, it does have something to do with the series.
Yeah. Yep. Sometimes the things they do have something to do with the things in the series. A great summary of TQ. Yeah.
All right, well, I think that wraps up. We're a little early this week, but that's not always a bad thing.
Yeah, I don't think we need to complain about that.
Yeah. Okay, so I do appreciate, as always, you joining me.
I always appreciate you having me.
Oh, I'm thrilled to have you. All right, well, would you please hit the credits?
My pleasure.
Our logo design is by James Ratcliffe. The theme music is Fly High by Burnout Syndromes, covered and performed by Luke Bartka. You can follow KoshienCast on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, and our email is koshiencast@gmail.com. Make sure to subscribe, rate, and review. We will be back next week with the best and worst from the world of sports anime, and until then, keep training.